welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to the Model 3 unveil. We have an amazing product to show you tonight. I think you're going to be blown away. But I want to start talking. Just preface this by talking about why are we doing this? Why is Tesla? Why does Tesla exist? Why are we making electric cars? Why does it matter? It's because it's very important to accelerate the transition to sustainable transport. It really is. This is really important for the future of the world. We have record high CO2 levels. We recently passed over 403 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere. You can see the chart, and it looks like a vertical line, and it's still climbing. And the last time there was this level of carbon concentration was 11 million years ago. Okay, that was approximately when primates started walking upright. The world was very different. We do not want to return to that situation. And what that CO2 increase results in is a steadily increasing temperature. So we've already increased by 2 degrees. In fact, that doesn't tell the whole story because the extremes of temperature increased by as much as 20 degrees. And that line is going to keep going for some time into the future. It's really important. It makes a difference if we accelerate the transition to sustainable transport. And beyond global warming, there's just the fact that combustion cars emit toxic gases. And according to an MIT study, there are 53,000 deaths per year in the US alone from auto emissions. So it stands to reason that if a vehicle is spewing toxic gas, that's obviously bad for your health. And so to address this, what we came up with at Tesla was what we call the secret master plan. Yeah. So this is the first blog that I ever wrote for the company, and it was originally a 3-step. It's originally a trilogy. Now it's a 4-part trilogy, as it turns out. But we needed to figure out how could we, as a tiny company with very few resources, actually make a difference. And the only way to do this was to start small, to start with a low-volume car, which is why we started with the Tesla Roadster. So with any new technology, it takes multiple iterations and it takes economies of scale before you can make it great and affordable. So step 1 was the Roadster. The Roadster was high price and low volume, but where it really made a difference was that it showed people that it showed the world that you could make a compelling electric car. You could make a great electric car. What was unique about the Roadster was it was the first really great electric car. And before the Roadster, people thought an electric car would be slow and ugly and low range and have bad performance. And we had to break that mold. It was incredibly important to show that that wasn't true. And so we made the Roadster, which is fast, it's beautiful, it's great performance. For those of you who bought the Roadster, thank you. And we only made 500 units a year, because that's all we really could make for the Roadster. But it had a very leveraged effect. In fact, Bob Lutz, the former vice chairman of GM, actually credits the Roadster with the Chevy Volt program, which then led to the Nissan Leaf program. And really, even though we were making very few cars, it actually had quite a huge leveraged effect on the auto industry. But there was still a lot more to do. And a lot of people said, well, the Roadster is nice, but it's sort of a toy and it's very expensive, and you couldn't really make a car that people would use every day, or a car that could really compete against the great combustion sedans of the world. So we thought, okay, we're going to make the Model S. So So the Model S Any of you drive a Model S?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Then you know it's a great sedan. It can seat up to 7 people, 5 adults and 2 kids. It's tested by Road and Track and Motor Trend and others as the fastest 4-door car in history ever. And it's got great handling. It's got great technology. It's got things like autopilot, and it was rated by almost every group as the best car in its year, and by Consumer Reports as the best car ever. Yeah. And again, it was super. The reason for that is not just to achieve some superlative in cars, but to show what an electric car can do. Because nobody believed that an electric car could do this. So what was really important was to show, the reason it was important was not to achieve awards or anything like that. It was to just show the car industry, show the world that an electric car really can be the best car. That's what really mattered. And now for cars, about half the market wants a sedan and about half the market wants an SUV. So we thought, well, we'll extend the Model S platform into the Model X. Okay. Both of these are very important because the revenue from the Model S and the X is what's needed to develop the Model 3. So the Model 3, with very high volume and all the engineering needed to achieve the cost reductions and the capabilities, it costs billions of dollars. So the S and the X are what pay for that Model 3 development. So I just want to say, for all of you who've bought an S or an X, thank you for helping pay for the Model 3. So the Model 3 is happening because of you. And so we actually have an S and an X on the side there, and has, of course, the Falcon Wing doors, which did cause us some challenges, but now they're working. So now, then going from the S and the X, we finally come to step 3, or the final step in the master plan, which is a mass market, affordable car. It was only possible to do that after going through the prior steps. But we're here, and we're here to show that to you tonight. So, okay. So I'm going to describe some of the aspects of the Model 3, and then we'll So let's move to describing. Well, so let's show the master plan again. Okay, so that's the master plan with steps 2 and 2.5. And now going to the Model 3. First of all, I want to start off by saying the Model 3 is going to be an incredibly safe car. We really believe at Tesla that safety has to come first. We care about you. We want you to be safe. We want your friends and family to be safe. This is paramount. The Model 3 will not just be 5-star on average, it will be 5-star in every category. And even the base Model 3 will do 0 to 60 miles an hour or 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in less than 6 seconds. At Tesla, we don't make slow cars. Okay, and of course, there will be versions of the Model 3 that go much faster. All right. And in terms of range, the range will be at least an EPA rating of 215 miles. I want to emphasize these are minimum numbers. We hope to exceed them. Yeah. It will also, all Model 3s will come standard with autopilot hardware. And all the autopilot safety features will be present in every car. That you won't need to buy an option. The autopilot safety features will always be there. So the Model 3 also fits 5 adults comfortably. Now comfortably is the important part here. Okay. But the challenge, obviously, with building a smaller car is how do you still make it comfortable with a bunch of people inside? So there are two important design steps we did with the Model 3 to achieve that. One was to move the instrument panel, or the firewall. There really isn't a firewall. We don't have a big combustion engine in front. We moved the front seats forward and compressed the instrument panel. When you do your rides tonight, you'll see what I mean. You're sitting a little further forward. It actually feels great on the front seats. That's what gives you the leg room to have 5 adults. And so that the first and second row have plenty of leg room. Then on the rear roof area is actually one continuous pane of glass. And the reason that's great is because it gives you amazing headroom and a feeling of openness. So it has, I think, by far the best roominess of any car in this size. Then in addition, it has, just like the Model S, it has a front and rear trunks. So it has more cargo capacity than any gasoline car of the same external dimensions. And yeah, and you can actually, somebody asked me this question recently, can you fit a 7-foot-long surfboard on the inside? The answer is yes, you can. Then with respect to supercharging, all Model 3s will come with supercharging standard. So the reason supercharging is very important, as many of you know, is that it gives you freedom of travel. Okay? It means you can conveniently go where you want, how you want. And a lot about having a car is it's about freedom. It's about going where you want to go. And so the superchargers are critical to that. So we're now at the point where we've built out over 3,600 superchargers worldwide. And about the same number of destination chargers. That's present day. By the end of next year, we will double the number of superchargers. And quadruple the number of destination chargers. So you will be able to go virtually anywhere. And in fact, because the onboard charger of the Model S is able to adapt to any country's voltage and amperage, wherever you go in the world, if there's electricity, you can charge. So then what about buying and servicing? So where we are today with Tesla is we've got 215 locations in Asia, North America, and Europe. And by the end of next year, we expect to more than double that to 441 locations. So the key point being, almost no matter where you are, in North America, Europe, or Asia, if you're near any even mid-sized metro area, you'll be able to buy a car and get your car serviced. So now, how are we going to make these cars? Okay, good question. We need to achieve high-volume production. So this is in 2 parts. First, there is the vehicle factory. So our Fremont factory in the past has actually made almost 500,000 cars a year. So we're confident that Tesla can achieve that number in the future in terms of vehicle production. So I think that's going to be, I wouldn't say straightforward, but very doable. And then what about batteries? Because in order to produce 500,000 cars a year, we would actually need the same battery production. We basically need to absorb the entire world's lithium-ion production. That's why we are building the Gigafactory. These are the recent pictures of the Gigafactory. This is a vital element. So to give you a sense of scale, the Gigafactory will actually have the largest footprint of any building of any kind. Okay? Volumetrically, it will only be second to the Boeing factory in Washington. So this is really quite an enormous facility. In fact, it'll produce more lithium-ion batteries than all other factories in the world combined. In this one location. So we're talking about 50 gigawatt hours a year of production. And it won't just be at that volume, but also be producing the most advanced cell and battery in the world. So it's the combination of high volume with the most advanced technology is what enables us to make the Model 3. And it's already operational today. So when are deliveries? Well, they're next year. So I do feel fairly confident that it will be next year. Yeah. And then in terms of price, well, of course, it'll be $35,000. And I want to emphasize that even if you buy no options at all, this will still be an amazing car. You will not be able to buy a better car for $35,000 or even close, even if you get no options. So it's a really good car even with no options. So do you want to see the car? Yeah! Well, we don't have it for you tonight. I'm just kidding, of course. It's April Fool's somewhere. All right, let's bring them out. So what do you think? You like the car? Seem good? All right. And this is kind of crazy, but I just told that the total number of orders for the Model 3 in the past 24 hours has now passed 115,000. So So, thank you. That's a lot, yeah. So thank you to everyone that ordered the car. We love you. And for those of you that are here, please enjoy your rides tonight in the Model 3. And for those online, you can order at Tesla.com. Thank you.
Chinese officials say they're deciding on a time frame to ban gas and diesel.
4 of the biggest cities in the world aim to ban all diesel-powered vehicles within the next decade.
China right now is working on a timetable to try and phase out gas-powered cars for electric ones.
The largest car market in the world might someday offer only electric and intelligent vehicles.
The mayors of Paris, Madrid, Athens, and Mexico City agreed to quit diesel by 2025.
It's a bold move, but does it indicate the end of the road for the traditional car industry? A surprise announcement from the British government means the sale of new diesel, petrol and hybrid vehicles will be banned by 2040.
China could change the cars we buy and drive and the money we spend to keep them running in the future.
Yeah, this is according to a new report out by Bloomberg. It says that China right now is working on a timetable to try and phase out gas-powered cars for electric ones. Well, experts say that move could then have a trickle-down impact and then reshape the whole car buying market. Well, the report indicates that China will likely set a 2030 goal. That is the same year that it pledged to cap carbon emissions.
The largest car market in the world might someday offer only electric and intelligent vehicles. Chinese officials say they're deciding on a time frame to ban gas and diesel. State media reports that ban could include the production and sale of fossil-fueled cars. The UK and France already announced plans to nix gas cars by 2040. Norway wants only green energy vehicles on its roads by 2025. But a plan from China could be even bigger news. For the past 8 years, Chinese car makers produced the most vehicles in the world. To help spur the industry, the Chinese government already gives homegrown electric car makers big subsidies. Last year, China sold 3 times more electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids than the US. And with China's vast population, some say the country has no choice but to embrace electric vehicles. China's Ministry of Industry and Information Technology will work out the timetable for the ban.
Okay, to China now, where the government is considering banning the production and sale of gasoline and diesel-powered vehicles.
Right, it's a drastic step, but not an entirely unprecedented one. Both the UK and France have already said they will ban petroleum vehicles starting in 2040. China's vice industry minister says turbulent times are ahead for his country's auto industry as it looks to fight pollution and compete with foreign car makers. Solange Mujan reports.
Goodbye air pollution, hello electric cars. At a forum of the Chinese auto industry, Beijing has said it is getting on the green car train. After Britain and France, China has announced it's beginning research on a timetable to phase out the sale of diesel and gasoline cars. They haven't set a target date yet, but Beijing says the switch is necessary, even if it may create, quote, turbulent times.
Some nations have worked out their timetables to stop conventional vehicle production. Our ministry has also started research to work out China's schedule. This move will surely bring profound changes to the environment and power of the auto industry.
Plagued by heavy air pollution, China's decision to phase out traditional automobiles could have a major effect on its environment and its economy. For after the U.S., China is the world's second largest consumer of gasoline, and there's a growing appetite for cars in the country. Already, they made 28 million cars last year. One proposal currently on the table is creating a sales quota system, one that would require at least 12% of cars sold in China to be electric or hybrid by 2020. Many automakers are eager to get on the potentially lucrative electric car bandwagon, even if Beijing has said they will phase out subsidies. Volvo, Ford, Renault, Nissan, and General Motors have already said they're working to develop electric cars in China.
The mayors of Paris, Madrid, Athens, and Mexico City agreed to quit diesel by 2025. Instead, they'll promote cycling, walking, and alternative vehicles like electric cars. Officials arrived at the decision at the C40 Mayors Summit in Mexico this week. World leaders met there to discuss ways they can improve air quality in major urban cities. The World Health Organization says about 3 million people die every year from outdoor air pollution, which might make it the world's largest single environmental health risk. The diesel ban is also a response to the Paris Agreement, a global initiative to cut down on fossil fuel emissions in order to slow down climate change. Members of the summit warned that the world's cities need to invest around $375 billion in climate action to avoid catastrophic rises in temperature. Paris Mayor Anne Hidalgo said, quote, "It is a lot, but there's no other option."
In a bid to reduce its carbon footprint, China is trying to replace the burning of traditional fossil fuels with electrical initiatives. Zheng Yibing reports on the changes taking place.
It's yet another smoky day for Beijing. Extensive burning of fossil fuels means the Chinese capital seldom sees blue skies, and it only gets worse in winter. In a bid to address this problem, the country is taking various approaches. That includes using electricity as a replacement. The electricity vehicle, or EV, is one of them.
This type of car has clean energy and spends only about $1 for about a 4-kilometer drive. That's at least half the amount of conventional cars.
But unlike going to the petrol station to refuel, EV users find it hard to charge their cars. To solve this problem, more charging posts are being built, and a smart center has just opened in Beijing, the country's only for monitoring and providing EV charging services now. It helps to locate the nearest and available posts instantly.
Users will soon charge their cars within 1 kilometer in downtown, 3 kilometers in suburbs, and 5 kilometers in outer suburb areas. With the guiding system, things are getting easier.
In Beijing, apart from the electric vehicles, there are other power replacement programs going on. One example is the use of electricity to replace coal at home and in industry. Such efforts focus on the old and inefficient coal-burning facilities like cooking, heating, and manufacturing.
Since 2003, we have had over 650,000 conversions in Beijing. In central Beijing, we can see no trace of coal-burning systems, and we are planning more conversions.
This could save close to 2 million tons of standard coal each year. Besides these conversions, the state grid is taking clean energy from wind, water, and solar power from the central and western regions and transmitting it to eastern areas, including Beijing. These changes may not be so noticeable yet, but change is taking place.
It's a daily problem in France's cities. Fuel-powered vehicles clogging up roads and polluting the air. But scenes like this may soon be a thing of the past. The French Environment Minister has revealed an ambitious clean energy plan that includes banning new oil and gas drilling and ending the sale of purely petrol and diesel cars by 2040, although hybrids will be allowed.
We must make France the #1 green economy by making the Paris Agreement an opportunity for creativity, innovation and employment. I hope I will succeed in reconciling economy and ecology.
Hulot wants to make the country carbon neutral by 2050. Green technologies will be supported, polluting ones taxed, and poorer people will be helped to buy electric cars. Most European car manufacturers are already focusing on the shift away from fuel. Swedish car maker Volvo has announced that it plans to produce only electric and hybrid cars from 2019.
The French government wants the country to become an environmental world leader, and it already has lots of anti-pollution measures in place, such as this electric car. It's part of a pay-as-you-go shared vehicle scheme here in Paris.
The French president is pushing his green credentials. He criticised Donald Trump's decision to withdraw the US from the Paris climate deal.
We all share the same responsibility. Make our planet great again.
Critics say the new plan doesn't go far enough, but most environmentalists welcome it.
The message is clear. This new climate plan in France is the demonstration that the transition is moving forward, and anyone who's trying to stop it will be actually missing the step towards the future, the economy, the future of the economy, the future of the societies.
Before becoming a minister, Hulot was France's most popular wildlife TV presenter and famously called for a green revolution. He'll be hoping that his celebrity may go some way to helping him achieve his goals.
It's a bold move, but does it indicate the end of the road for the traditional car industry? A surprise announcement from the British government means the sale of new diesel, petrol and hybrid vehicles will be banned by 2040.
We have to get rid of petrol and diesel cars off our roads if we're going to make sure not only that we deal with the health problems that air pollution causes, but also that we meet our climate change targets.
The British move goes further than similar plans in France, which is ending sales of petrol and diesel vehicles by 2040, but allowing hybrids to continue. And it's part of a trend. This month, Volvo said all its new models would be electric or hybrid from 2019. But British car industry bosses say they're worried about a rush to get rid of the internal combustion engine altogether.
First of all, in terms of batteries, there's only one battery plant in Europe, one, none in the UK. So that needs to be developed. Secondly, think about the infrastructure. There's about 12,000 public charging points on UK roads. That needs to be expanded massively.
Certainly, we need a lot of our transport to be electrified. We need our trains, our buses and our freight to move towards electric. So obviously, electric charging infrastructure should be a priority. But for private citizens, you know, for Londoners, we need to be providing people with really convenient alternatives to using a car.
The British ban is part of a new clean air strategy that's been published just days before a deadline set by the High Court. Now, after a long legal battle, the government was ordered to come up with a new plan to tackle the harmful pollutant, nitrogen dioxide. It's largely produced by diesel vehicles, and it's been linked to 6,000 premature deaths a year here in London alone. Campaigners say this area in South London went over annual legal limits for nitrogen dioxide in just the first 5 days of this year. And official figures show air pollution is linked to at least 40,000 early deaths each year in Britain. Some environmentalists accuse the government of planning for the long term while ignoring a public health emergency.
And if the water we were drinking was as dirty as the air that we're breathing, we'd see that and we'd be doing something about that. So it's about time instead of long-term plans, let's get on with dealing with this short-term public health crisis now.
The British government recently set out proposals for a scrappage scheme to get rid of the most polluting diesel vehicles. But its latest plan has reinvigorated the debate across Europe about how soon the traditional engine should be consigned to history.
Let's talk about China now, because an energy conglomerate there is actually seeking opportunities in electric vehicles, announcing plans to make batteries for zero-emission cars. In our exclusive interview with Bloomberg here, Golden Concord Group's president, Ko Bing-gun, says that the company plans to team up with a car maker in China to join the already heated EV market.
We believe that the new energy vehicle is definitely an important direction for our company's development in the future. We are now discussing the details with Jianling Motors Group to cooperate on EV projects. We will each bring our own advantages together to further push on the front of technology innovation. The competition in this area has already been very fierce in China. We need to employ strategies that are different from our solar manufacturing when entering the EV market.
Are you aiming to be the Tesla of China, or is it a very different vision?
GCL is not hugely ambitious in the EV sector. At this stage, we simply want to take part in the fast development of the industry. Tesla has great practice in EV manufacturing, as most players are learning from it. We choose to proceed based on our own situation instead of copying the Tesla model.
Generally, how do you see things developing in the solar sector broadly? How do you see things playing out, given all those different factors?
Solar energy is definitely becoming one of the basic units of global energy in the future. Therefore, we all believe it has a very bright business prospect. It's common to see market fluctuations and face tough global competition, but we have remained extremely competitive as we always seek to optimize our business structure to reduce possible risks.
Solar cell prices have been pressured over quite a long period of time, but they've started to inch up now marginally. Do you think that price increase that we're seeing is going to be sustained for solar cells?
Looking at the long run, the prices of solar products will continue to move downward as a result of technology improvement. Development of capacity and growth of scale are still dominating the industry despite the slowdown we're seeing at the moment.
So there's a bit of pressure now building in the US to look at putting tariffs on solar cell imports. How concerned would you be about that? What kind of impact could that have on your business? And are you taking any steps to mitigate any potential US tariffs?
Measures of trade protection have already exerted certain impacts on relevant industries and business. We hope governments and international agencies can soon take effective actions under the WTO framework to end the practices of anti-dumping and anti-subsidy worldwide.
Blue skies and the soothing sound of electric vehicles roaming the city streets.
China is said to be discussing a plan to ease the rules on foreign electric vehicle makers.
Jaguar will reportedly release its first fully electric car, the I-Pace, on March 1st.
Electric cars are here to stay. Some of the London's iconic black taxis will soon run on batteries.
This is how China sees its near future. Blue skies and the soothing sound of electric vehicles roaming the city streets. Present day more often looks like this. Research shows that 1/3 of air pollution in China comes from petrol and diesel cars. That's why the government recently decided that traditionally fueled cars are a thing of the past. And like France and Britain, it wants to ban them in the next few decades. When Chen Dong bought his electric car 2 years ago, he didn't have to go through the license plate lottery, a government measure to limit traffic. He also got his car much cheaper because of a government subsidy of up to $15,000. And unlike petrol and diesel-fueled cars, he can drive in any part of the city, anytime he wants, as long his car has enough power.
Once I was about to go to a charging station, but my navigation led me to the wrong place. There was no charging station and not a single person around. I was forced to call a rescue team.
In China, more than 500,000 people bought an electric car last year. That's half of all electric cars sold worldwide, forcing the government to quickly build more charging stations. It's been hard to keep up with the demand, and car batteries often don't last much more than 200 kilometers.
Despite government incentives, electric cars are still not that popular here in China. Many consider them impractical and ugly, but producers are trying very hard to make electric cars more fashionable.
Car makers are increasingly pressured to produce electric cars. A recently announced attractive credit system allows companies to make money selling carbon credit quota to traditional car makers. But some experts believe the government's plan is unrealistic, and they question the benefits of electric cars.
If we want to replace all the traditional cars in the next 3 decades, this is a lie. This is a fundamentally scientifically lie to the world.
Greenpeace sees China's rapid switch to electric cars as a positive step to combat climate change. But the environmental group says it's by far not enough, because 70% of the country's power plants are using coal, a major emitter of greenhouse gas.
If we really want a clean future and we really want to combat climate change, only pushing for electric vehicle is not enough. We need to at the same time push for a phase out of coal-fired power plants.
Saving the planet or not, for consumers like Chen Dong, driving an electric car is more about saving money than it's about reducing emissions. A campaign the government still needs to work on as well.
China is said to be discussing a plan to ease the rules on foreign electric vehicle makers. It could allow overseas companies to set up wholly owned EV businesses in free trade zones, and they've been told the policy could be in place as early as next year. Well, joining us now from Detroit is our US Autos editor, Craig Trudell. Craig, thanks very much for joining us this morning. What does this plan say about China liberalising its auto market?
Well, obviously, this is something that that companies, foreign companies, have been pushing for some time. They've pushed for this even from a sort of broader standpoint, rather than just EV production, just their operations in general. This was a policy that was set up in the 1990s, back when China was really just a minnow in the sort of global automotive sea, and nowadays it's very much the shark, and it's really able to stand on its own. There are a lot of Chinese manufacturers who have some real capability and can be taken seriously and maybe don't need these sorts of protectionist measures. So this is a step toward liberalizing the situation in China, but definitely a small step. We're talking about EV production and free trade zones, so not no holds barred at this point.
Are there any risks to the momentum in the electric car market, though? Because some analysts have voiced concerns it could collapse if there weren't any government incentives.
Yeah, I think the government really is not going to let that happen, right? Anytime we've seen the market in general slip in China, you've seen the government take measures to make sure that the market returns to a growth phase. I think with electric vehicles, you are seeing an attempt by the government to move away from paying out a ton of subsidies to more of a credit system like we have here in California. But they will test those waters carefully and make sure that they're not killing the EV market, and it's killing EVs in their infancy. They really have a vested interest in making sure that these take hold in this market because of the environmental issues and the pressure they're under to clean up the air.
Craig, what about the winners and the losers, though? Who are they?
Well, certainly Tesla comes to mind as one that this policy is very significant, just because they don't have a presence in China. They don't have manufacturing in China, I should say. So the idea that Tesla earlier this year said they were exploring production in Shanghai, which would be one of the zones where there would be free trade, and potentially if this policy is implemented, where they could set up shop without forming a joint venture, that would be significant to them, because they wouldn't have to worry about intellectual property concerns. They would be able to wholly own the operations there, whereas you have GM, Ford, BMW, Volkswagen. They have to share in the spoils of their operations in China with 50-50 joint ventures.
Jaguar will reportedly release its first fully electric car, the I-Pace, on March 1st. The SUV features 400 horsepower and the ability to go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 4 seconds. It's also able to achieve an 80% charge in just 45 minutes when using a 100 kilowatt charger. The I-Pace is reportedly meant to allow Jaguar to compete with Tesla's own high-end electric SUV, the Model X. The company is also getting a head start on competitor Mercedes-Benz, which plans to start making its own electric SUV in 2019.
Electric cars are here to stay. Some of the London's iconic black taxis will soon run on batteries. Admitting that the times are changing, the fossil fuel giant Royal Dutch Shell now offers battery charging at a few of its gas stations in England, with more to follow.
We recognise that electric vehicles are part of the future of transport in the country, and we want to make sure that we offer our customers choice and that they have the option to recharge on one of our forecourts if they want to.
However, there's still some confusion about the usefulness of electric cars. They have a limited range, and recharging the battery takes at least half an hour. But with just a handful of public charging stations, it may actually take much longer.
Are you going to be able to plug directly in, or have you got one or two, or as in some cases that I found, 3 or 4 cars waiting in front of you? So before you've even plugged your car in for its first charge, you might have to wait for 2 or 3 hours.
In large cities such as Wrocław, Poland, the future of electric cars may be in car sharing, much like the increasingly popular bike sharing.
Procedura wypożyczenia ma być jak najprostsza dla użytkownika.
The reservation and rental is made by a smartphone. The car is opened by a mobile app. Rental ends also by using the mobile app. Everything without the keys to the car.
With a price of about $16 an hour, these electric cars will be cheaper to drive than the smallest gas-powered rental cars. Together with no hassle renting through a phone app, they may become a good solution for city dwellers and the air that they breathe.
As a pioneer in this space, we have done about 65 million kilometers of electric mobility in India, which is a huge number. It's like reaching Mars, right?
Like I said at the beginning, it's a chicken and the egg situation. So we require the charging infrastructure to have electric vehicles. But without electric vehicles, a charging infrastructure also will not exist. So this is the problem.
Well, joining me now is Eric Fairbairn, founder and chief executive of Electric Vehicle Charging Network, Pod Points. Eric, good evening to you. How many of these points are we going to need in 2040 then?
So a very large number is the answer, because what you have to remember is that you have a system a bit like a petrol station in the future. In reality, you're charging your car wherever it parks, so predominantly at home, in the workplace, and also in public space as well. But very loosely, I talk about, for every electric car that gets sold, about 1.5 charging points. One at home, certainly, but then a percentage share of workplace charging and a percentage share of charging in the public space. So the number gets quite big.
That's going to be a nightmare, though, isn't it, in the streets?
I don't think it's going to be a nightmare. I think the product that you see in the streets, perhaps around London today, that's not what we're not going to see one of those every other location. You know, we're going to be much more sympathetic to what that looks like. But the reality is, each place you park is going to have the facility to charge your car in the future.
So the government has said today it's going to put up £100 million towards supporting car charging infrastructure. Is that going to be enough?
So I think that's really a small amount versus what we need to do, but it's positive. In reality, the government is not going to fund the mass rollout of electric vehicle charging. It's going to be private enterprises like what I do that are funding this. So I think it's very positive. The government is good at initiating this market, but eventually this is a commercial rollout on commercial terms.
Quite so. So I mean, what sort of returns are investors going to be looking for to get their money back if they put their money into infrastructure?
Fine. So, I mean, you know, a number of different ways you can fund this in terms of investment, but fundamentally you've got an asset, putting an asset model in, and you've got an amount of energy which is provided by that asset. So you end up with a small amount of margin on the energy which is being supplied, is being used to pay for the rollout of that asset base. So it's a fairly, you know, fundamentally well-recognised model of how you roll asset out, but it is fundamentally commercial. You know, I welcome a bit of government investment, but really that's just to get the industry early stage.
Big question though this, Eric. We've got, at the moment, the government gets something like 4% of all of its revenues from duty on petrol and diesel sales. It's going to have to replace that. So ultimately, electric cars are going to have to be taxed more, aren't they?
I would agree. I don't see why moving to electric vehicles affects the net tax take. It shouldn't. But obviously it comes from slightly different areas. So whether in the future we have a bit of tax on electricity for electric vehicles, or whether we move to sort of per mile based charging, or whether we move more to things like the congestion charge, I don't necessarily have the answer of what the tax structure looks like, but I don't see that net it will be any different. A similar tax take will come from the motorist, in my opinion, moving forward.
The Chinese government is very eager to promote electric vehicles, but in order for an American company to manufacture in China, they typically have to have a JV, and Tesla has signaled that they're very eager to open and to launch a production facility in China, but they would likely like to operate that themselves. And so whatever is ultimately decided will pave the way for other companies to try to do the same. So I think it's just a very delicate negotiation that's been going on for months, and it looks like it'll be several months before we have something solid as well.
Yeah, all foreign car makers partner up with a Chinese company. Why would it be different for Tesla? But tell us, how's Tesla doing right now in China? Because they're already selling their cars.
Sure. So Tesla does sell a lot of cars in China. It's just that they're more expensive because of the import tax. And so as more and more electric vehicle offerings come online in China, there's a concern that, you know, Tesla won't be able to compete. But I mean, my sense is that Chinese customers know the Tesla brand. A lot of the Tesla stores in China are located close to Apple stores. The Model X seems to be doing pretty well there. It's just that China moves very quickly when it comes to its own government policies, and you have a lot of domestic automakers that are very quickly beginning to get their own cars out there.
I would imagine that China is trying to woo Tesla all the same, though. It's a, you know, premium brand. It's got a lot of cachet. It's got a, you know, a charismatic CEO. Is Tesla holding out for something in particular, do you think, Dana? Why isn't the deal done already?
You know, I don't have a ton of insight into how the negotiations are day to day. I think it's a very fluid situation, but I would imagine that Tesla really wants to make sure that they can protect their IP, and that they would love to be able to own a manufacturing facility and not have to do a JV. But that would be a huge change to the way that China has typically operated, and so I think it's just a very delicate process that has been, you know, going on for quite some time. I guess what's interesting to me is that, you know, Tesla confirmed that it was talking to Shanghai in June, and there was expectation that we would have some kind of deal by the end of 2017. Now we're, you know, deep into the first quarter of 2018, and there's no sign of anything being imminent.
1 out of 3 exhibitors at the 2018 Consumer Electronics Show hails from China.
Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas has mostly been dominated by autonomous vehicles with a focus on artificial intelligence motoring.
Leading the Empower part of the equation is the autonomous off-roader dubbed 3ED18.
The rise of AI technology extends to startup businesses too, which represents the future of China's tech industry. Unfamiliar names from China such as Byton, an electric car startup, got a lot of attention.
The gap between China and the United States are closing, and they're closing fast. And what will give an edge to China is a much larger population and a faster growing market.
One of the biggest events on the tech calendar kicked off this week with firms showing off their latest gadgets and innovations, but this year's Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas has mostly been dominated by autonomous vehicles with a focus on artificial intelligence motoring. Noah Adam with the details.
Autonomous vehicles have starred in CES in previous years, but they haven't received the spotlight as much as they are doing this year. Toyota, for example, unveiled the e-Palette, which the firm says is a multi-purpose transportation and mobility platform. The boxy electric vehicle is essentially a blank slate to be modified for almost any use. It could shuttle people to a hotel or become the hotel itself, or it could transport people to and from work or become the office. Car maker has already struck partnerships with Amazon, Pizza Hut and Uber, among others. Toyota's fellow Japanese rival Honda, meanwhile, unveiled its 3E concept, or Empower, Experience and Empathy, to help people in everyday tasks. Leading the Empower part of the equation is the autonomous off-roader dubbed 3ED18. The firm claims it's highly maneuverable and almost indestructible, helping to keep human exposure to dangerous environments to a minimum. Honda's 3EC18, a robotic wheelchair of sorts, represents the experience part of its vision. The boxy electric cargo concept can be transformed into a canopy, for example, to be used by street vendors selling their wares. For empathy, a light bulb-shaped robot on wheels named 3EA18 uses AI to understand the needs of people. It could be used as a museum guide, hotel receptionist or shopping assistant. Aside from car makers, tech companies also want a piece of the action. Chip maker Intel announced partnerships with BMW, Nissan, Volkswagen and Ferrari to help develop autonomous vehicle technology. It will also leverage Intel's Mobileye-based mapping technology for improving self-driving cars' navigation process. Graphic card maker Nvidia revealed that it's working with over 320 companies on self-driving through products like its Drive PX and now Drive Savior, GPU-powered autonomous driving computers. With such technologies advancing at a rapid pace, it may not be long until we see our roads filled with vehicles lacking a steering wheel or even people.
Already the most vibrant AI platform in China.
In the heart of CES, the self-proclaimed Google of China, Baidu, holds an event called Baidu World. Chief Operating Officer Qi Lu says Baidu is focused on accelerating artificial intelligence at what he calls China speed.
The United States is still by far the best. However, the gap between China and the United States are closing, and they're closing fast. And what will give an edge to China is a much larger population and a fast-growing market.
That allows for greater experimentation. On a live stream from Beijing, this was billed as the first ever self-driving parade, complete with sedans, minibuses, street sweepers, and delivery vehicles, all navigating without a human driver.
Buddy, thank you very much for the delivery, especially in such a very cold morning.
This year's Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas has mostly been dominated by autonomous vehicles with a focus on artificial intelligence motoring. Toyota, for example, unveiled the e-Palette, which the firm says is a multi-purpose transportation and mobility platform. The car maker says the interior can be customized to meet the needs of partner companies, which so far include Amazon, Pizza Hut and Uber, among others. Its fellow Japanese rival Honda, meanwhile, unveiled its 3E concept, or Empower, Experience and Empathy. It envisions a future in which multiple robotic devices work together as a system to help people in everyday tasks. They include an autonomous off-roader designed to help with heavy-duty work, a robotic wheelchair of sorts to help people get around, and a light bulb-shaped device on wheels that is designed to understand the needs of people and offer assistance accordingly.
China's biggest tech companies have ambitions in the automotive industry too. Baidu is using its Apollo 2.0 to work on tech for self-driving cars. In addition to automobiles, AI-loaded robots were also prominent. Nearly half of the robot-related booths were from China. The rise of AI technology extends to startup businesses too, which represents the future of China's tech industry. Unfamiliar names from China such as Byton, an electric car startup, got a lot of attention. On Sunday, Byton unveiled an electric car that with one charge is enough for a week of urban commuting. Chinese startups are succeeding in getting a lot of attention publicly, and in that regard, Korean firms still lag behind.
This year, Korean startups did participate in the CES. Overall, some received awards for innovation, but some of them didn't get much attention. I think that it will be very important for our startup companies to show their products more often at global exhibitions like CES or NWC.
Participating in the CES could help local companies stand out from their global competitors, and in turn help them get funding, particularly at a time when investors are becoming more cautious.
Consumer Electronics Show wraps up today in Las Vegas, and our very own Holland Cook, host of The Big Picture, just back from that convention. Great to have you back. All right, what's the headline? You're there every year. What impressed you?
Well, it's big business. $321 billion this year in the USA alone. And throughout the Great Recession, this consumer electronics category has never had a down year. The funniest thing upon arrival there is that we, the news media, are instructed by the Consumer Electronics Show not to use the phrase Consumer Electronics Show, because they're trying to shake the notion that it's a gadget bazaar. And with Bitcoin and presidential tweets grabbing the headlines, we Christmas shop on Amazon, we get a ride from Uber. There's a lot more to technology than just gadgets.
What about these cars that aren't going to need a driver, which I'm kind of for, because I'm sick of people holding traffic up because they're too busy on their iPhones. So, you know, not to multitask.
But drunk driving, distracted driving, it's been estimated we could save 30,000 lives a year if we took human error out of the equation. BMW, Ford, GM, Nissan, VW, and Volvo say they're going to have autonomous cars on the road in 3 years. Tesla even sooner. You won't be able to buy one till 2025, and they won't be cheap. But the first driverless cars we're going to see are going to be Uber and Lyft taxis. And this is going to be huge for the trucking industry. They're going to platoon with a truck driver also driving a couple other trucks that accompany him. And as you know, this has been happening for years because you took me years and years ago to Big Iron in North Dakota to look at the advanced technology in ag equipment. For 15 years now, John Deere has had self-driving tractors. Your car already has GPS, it already has cruise control. So we're in the process of making all these computers you operate handshake. Obviously, we have to wait for nationwide 5G for this to be widespread, but this is going to happen.
Quickly, what's the big thing for 2018?
Voice control. Alexa, turn the lights off, turn the heat up. It's already happening, and we're going to eventually abandon the keyboard and just talk to our devices.
Well, I have to admit, we had Alexa in the house at the lake for Christmas.
Cool.
I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Frank Sinatra. Holland, great to have you with us.
As tech companies in Silicon Valley vie to get their self-driving cars on the road, the reality of autonomous vehicles has become a matter of when, not if. And some predict that once Tesla, Alphabet, and Uber complete their driverless arms race, transportation will become free. But as with many free things, there may be a catch. Here to explain is Judith Donath, an advisor at Harvard's Berkman Klein Center. She is in Boston. Thanks for joining us. Let's start with your theory. Companies are pouring billions of dollars into developing this technology. How would free driverless cars be a sustainable business model?
Well, the idea I had put forth was projection from the way that the web developed. Because in the early days of the web, we never thought that advertising would be a big part of it, let alone the thing that really drove its development. And I was thinking, you know, it's been such a huge force with things. What happens when that hits cars? And instead of having to support articles by getting people to read ads for goods, you could support giving people rides places by taking them to the places you would otherwise be advertising for on the way.
Judith, how would that differ from public transportation, say like a bus?
Well, a bus right now, you pay to get on it, and perhaps it's subsidized, but you pay a fair amount, some amount to get on it, and it takes you where you're planning to go with some stops along the way. What I think may be interesting with driverless cars is remember, they are going to exist within a ecology of intelligent devices, of already the type of tracking that we get online, where there will be a tremendous amount of information about what you're interested in, what you might want to be buying, what you would consider doing, what's very tempting for you. And so you could have something that said, well, you could, for instance, go to the beach with your friends and it will cost $20. Or if you all stop on the way at Target or something, it's free.
And, you know, some people are already wary about the amount of information collected by companies like Amazon and Google. Will people be receptive to this idea?
I think it depends how it's framed. And if you, I mean, one of the interesting pieces is that a lot of the companies that are developing the cars are the ones that also have these vast databases. I think a lot of how receptive people are to it is if it's presented as this wonderful bonus where you feel like you're getting away with something for free. You know, part of it is if you have something like, you know, Alexa's granddaughter, that's your little friend and assistant at home, and it knows all kinds of things about what you need, and it just makes these suggestions about how you could, you know, make this stop and that stop along the way, and how convenient and handy it is. Or don't you remember, you know, it's your, you know, aunt's birthday in 2 weeks, maybe you should stop at a shop to pick her something up. I think there's a lot of ways it can be framed where people would feel that the system was doing them a favor. On the other hand, if you look at it from the perspective of how much additional consumption something like this would entail, even though people felt they were getting a bargain, they may end up spending considerably more, is the difference.
Elon Musk is almost too incredible to believe. He's an engineer and entrepreneur worth more than $15 billion. He backs himself on high-risk ventures, which invariably lead to huge profits. First, there was PayPal, the way to buy and sell on the internet. Then Tesla, the electric supercar he built. And SpaceX, the rocket company NASA uses. Now his sights are set even further afield, colonising Mars. And if he reminds you of Tony Stark, Iron Man, you're right, because he's also the inspiration behind the Hollywood superhero. Iron Man Tony Stark is a brilliant, relentlessly driven, and more than a little eccentric billionaire who always aims high.
Mr. Musk, how are you?
Congratulations on the promotion.
Thank you very much.
Exactly like Elon Musk.
Yeah, good idea for an electric jet. You do. Yeah.
And if you spend any time with the real-life Tony Stark,
thank you all for coming tonight.
Be prepared to move quickly.
But this is where our mission control and launch control will be.
One moment, he's a rocket man.
Liftoff of the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket.
Proudly boasting his $2 billion contract with NASA, ferrying supplies to the International Space Station.
It's just a giant kick in the balls to the people that said we couldn't do it.
next minute, he's perfecting another rocket, his electric superfast supercar, the Tesla. It is a beast. It's a monster. 691 horsepower?
Yeah, and it'll go to 0 to 100 kilometers in 3.1 seconds.
Whatever he does, and at whatever speed he's doing it, there's always a legion of adoring musketeers on hand. What really strikes me about your staff is everyone is almost messianic with their vision. They're true believers in Elon Musk's vision of the world.
Sure. Well, I mean, generally I try to discourage cult-like behavior, by the way.
Elon Musk grew up in South Africa, studied in Canada, but then moved to California and became a Silicon Valley superstar by creating the online commerce business PayPal. A few years later, Musk sold PayPal for a packet. He then bravely or stupidly poured his great fortune into Tesla, an electric car startup company that aimed to beat petrol-powered vehicles.
Well, so far this is a very expensive car. Call this the $50 million car.
If ever there was a way to blow $1 billion, this was it.
You know, this is really just the beginning of the beginning. All right.
So when people were telling you, this is insane, what did you say?
Well, I don't want to give the impression that I thought Tesla would be successful from the beginning. I actually thought we would fail.
You did? Really?
Oh, yeah. I thought we'd maybe have a, I don't know, 10, 20% chance of success. I mean, startups in general fail, and auto startups especially fail.
Sure. In the early days, Tesla was a hugely expensive money pit, and his prediction of failure and personal bankruptcy came perilously close to true.
You know, each month that passes is literally costs us tens of millions of dollars. I mean, we need to appreciate that.
It didn't help that the traditional car industry treated Elon Musk as a joke.
Right now we're facing an issue which is that it's sort of a crisis of confidence among our customers. We should be expecting it.
They were basically saying, oh, well, this proves it. You know, here's this cheeky bloke from Silicon Valley who thinks he can make a car. He's going to fail.
Right, sure.
How did you feel at that stage?
Well, I felt pretty miserable, honestly. It did honestly look like we were going to fail. We almost ran out of money. In fact, at the end of 2008, I had to invest the last money that I had in the company.
You staked your fortune, didn't you?
Everything, yeah. I would have ended up owing money if Tesla's gone bankrupt. And we managed to close the financing round on the last hour of the last day that it was possible. So it was Christmas Eve, 2008, 6 p.m.
Shares of the electric car maker Tesla Motors are up.
At the 11th hour, Musk convinced investors to give him a second chance. And set out to build a completely new type of electric car.
Yeah. This is a full-size model.
Can you show us?
Which part?
All of it.
The whole thing? I don't think we can show you the whole thing, right?
The death of Australia's car manufacturing industry was Elon Musk's gain. So you've been here from the very beginning?
From the very beginning.
Australian Ben Burnett, that's him on the right, used to work for Holden in Melbourne. He now manages clay modelling of new Tesla cars.
We should be doing it in our own country.
Fellow Aussie Ron Polonsky used to work at Ford. I can imagine there's a huge attraction in designing an electric vehicle from the ground up.
And that allows us to kind of rethink how the car's designed and manufactured. We challenge everything and then we change.
Can I be the Australian data for a moment? This country is a nation of petrolheads. They love their big trucks, their big cars, their throbbing V8s. They love their gasoline. I don't see them getting rid of oil anytime soon. Why would an electric car work in that market?
Well, I mean, I think Australians also appreciate advanced technology and great engineering, and that this car is regarded by the most difficult critics in the world as the best car.
Three years ago, Tesla really took off with the launch of the Model S. It's a four-door sedan that looks nothing like what most people would assume an electric vehicle to be.
We wanted to create an electric car that was beautiful, had incredible handling, great acceleration. In fact, the Model S has got the highest acceleration of any four-door car ever.
It's a beautiful car to drive. As if playing up to his credentials as an automotive renegade, Musk ensured there were plenty of idiosyncratic quirks in his new car. The stereo does go up to 11, thanks Spinal Tap. And in the performance Tesla, there's a curious selector, appropriately called the insane button. It immediately unleashes an eye-watering 691 horsepower to the car's four wheels. And if you push it and put your foot on the accelerator, it does amazing things. Wow! My God! That's amazing. It just pushes you back into the back of your seat.
When I was trying the car out, the acceleration felt insane. So it's like, well, we should probably have a button there so like people could decide if they want to have insane acceleration or not.
So it has the speed, the looks, and the gadgetry. But the issues that have always held electric cars back have been price and range. Most owners talk about range anxiety, but this car can travel around 400 kilometres before it needs recharging. So here we are, en route from LA to San Francisco. And this being an electric car, on that sort of journey, you've got to top it up probably a couple of times to be safe. The nice thing about this, though, is they've got these supercharging stations all along the way. A couple of clicks on that, it opens it up, plugs it in. In 15 minutes, the car's energy's all topped up. And better still, it's free. Which helps ease the pain of the car's high cost. Although the boss and chief salesman says, like all evolving technology, it will get cheaper.
Our third generation car, the Model 3, it'll be a smaller car and at much higher volume, we're aiming to approximately halve the price of the car and be able to produce something for $35,000 instead of for $75,000.
Now you're talking.
Yeah.
Having Tesla's fortunes improving gives Elon Musk the chance to pursue his other great vision. Space. His company, SpaceX, builds unmanned rockets which resupply the International Space Station more economically and efficiently than NASA.
Liftoff on the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket.
It's a risky business, as Musk discovered last month.
And we appear to have had a launch vehicle failure.
But even this is just a stepping stone to his most ambitious dream of all.
Standing by for some information.
SpaceX is an astonishing achievement, but you've also got your plans for Mars?
Think about the future. It's just, if we're out there exploring stars, it's so much more exciting and inspiring than one where we are forever confined to Earth.
And a Mars mission?
Yeah, so in order to make Mars work, we need kind of the next generation of rockets and spacecraft. And we think we've got something that will enable people to move to Mars for approximately $500,000.
$500,000?
Yeah. And you can get a free return ticket with that, by the way. So
the thing that most people say about you is the vision of the future that you have is quite breathtaking. And so many times along the way, people have naysayed, haven't they?
I guess there's certainly been a lot of attacks. One thing I've noticed in recent months and years is that it's become obvious to a lot of the entrenched interests that Tesla and SpaceX are not going to die. Previously, they thought, well, they've just basically ignored us or laughed at us. Now we're actually starting to make real inroads, and they're treating us as a real threat. And so it is quite daunting.
This is actually within the power of humanity to do, and I think it's something that we must do.
Elon Musk strives for what others might think impossible. Thinking ahead of the curve, he wants technology to improve the way we live for generations to come. Do you get the feeling that there's a lot of dystopian writing about the world at the moment, the future? It's very bleak the way the future's cast, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess bleak stories make for better drama.
But you're an optimist, aren't you? You're hopeful.
I am hopeful. What I'm trying to do is maximize the probability that the future will be better. So it's sort of altruistic, but I think, why wouldn't you try to make the future better if you're going to be part of it?
Chinese solar cell specialist Hanergy to develop thin-film solar panels for a future line of electric cars.
China's 13th five-year plan has an ownership target of 5 million battery electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles by 2020.
Audi has reportedly teamed up with Chinese solar cell specialist Hanergy to develop thin-film solar panels for a future line of electric cars. The state-of-the-art panels have an efficiency of over 25% and are thin and flexible. According to reports, the energy generated by the panels flows to the car's electrical system to power accessories like air conditioning and seat heaters. In turn, these features draw less power from the car's battery, which will boost the car's driving range. A spokesperson for Audi said this week, "Together with Hanergy, we plan to install innovative solar technology in our electric cars that will extend their range and is also sustainable."
Cars inch along in one of the many congested areas of Beijing.
For over half of 2016, Beijing was shrouded in smog. Vehicle emissions contributed to 22% of the total level of PM 2.5. And during traffic jams, pollution can soar 3 times. The city is in dire need of green travel solutions.
32-year-old Yang Yong was an early entrant in this nationwide campaign to clear the air. He drives an electric vehicle for daily commutes and short-distance weekend outings. Back in the days when EVs were largely a novelty or even considered a toy, Yang says he knew it was the way to go.
It's economic, silent, and has no gas fumes to cause car sickness. The idea of green travel sets the trend for future.
Driving an EV can be very economical. Depending on engine size, a fossil fuel car costs about 36 to 90 yuan, or 5 to 13 US$ for every 100 kilometers. An electric car costs as little as 8 yuan, or over $1, to 32 yuan, or over $4. Spreading out the cost over time, it's even cheaper than using public transport. China's 13th Five-Year Plan has an ownership target of 5 million battery electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles by 2020. But EVs have yet to gain traction in the Chinese market. In Beijing, for example, the ratio of EVs to fossil fuel cars is about 1 to 50.
The sustainability of or quality of the new car currently in the market are not all very promising. The battery's quality, also these recharging devices, so people kind of a little bit reluctant. But I think in the very near future, more and more people want to buy an electric car, I think. There's no doubt about that.
The lack of charging facilities has long been a major obstacle, but that barrier is gradually coming down. Dai Kongwei is head of research at the Beijing Electric Vehicle Company. She says they're working on a battery replacement program. In the future, don't bother charging it, just replace it.
We aim to switch the battery for an EV in less than 3 minutes. The EV can accept up to 10,000 changes. If it works as planned, drivers would no longer have to wait hours to recharge. We're currently setting up replacement stations and will put 6,000 such EV taxis on the road in 2017.
This could mean that owning an electric vehicle can be just as convenient as owning a fuel-powered one. But do EVs alone hold the potential to tip the balance for the environment?
EV is definitely a solution, but it's not the only solution. I think EV plus a lot of the other efforts like policy on power grid reform and also renewable energy improvement. And I think all these factors, if we can integrate them together, I think EV can demonstrate a very good, potential for reduce the carbon emission.
Another advantage, EVs are exempt from smugglers and other driving restrictions.
No snowflake in avalanche ever feels responsible. It's in the hands of every man to act and improve the environment.
Yang believes if people act now, they can help steer the future of green travel in China.
Craig, thanks very much for joining us this morning. What does this plan say about China liberalising its auto market?
Well, obviously, this is something that companies, foreign companies, have been pushing for some time. They've pushed for this even from a sort of broader standpoint, rather than just EV production, just their operations in general. This was a policy that was set up in the 1990s, back when China was really just a minnow in the sort of global automotive sea. And nowadays, it's very much the shark, and it's really able to stand on its own. There are a lot of Chinese manufacturers who have some real capability and can be taken seriously, and maybe don't need these sorts of protectionist measures. So this is a step toward liberalizing the situation in China, but definitely a small step. We're talking about EV production and free trade zones, so not no holds barred at this point.
Are there any risks to the momentum in the electric car market, though? Because some analysts have voiced concerns it could collapse if there weren't any government incentives.
Yeah, I think the government really is not going to let that happen, right? Anytime we've seen the market in general slip in China, you've seen the government take measures to make sure that the market returns to a growth phase. I think with electric vehicles, you are seeing an attempt by the government to move away from paying out a ton of subsidies to more of a credit system like we have here in California. But they will test those waters carefully and make sure that they're not killing the EV market, and it's killing EVs in their infancy. They really have a vested interest in making sure that these take hold in this market because of the environmental issues and the pressure they're under to clean up the air.
Craig, what about the winners and the losers, though? Who are they?
Well, certainly Tesla comes to mind as one that that this policy is very significant, just because they don't have a presence in China. They don't have, you know, manufacturing in China, I should say. So the idea that Tesla earlier this year said they were exploring production in Shanghai, which would be one of the zones where there would be free trade, and potentially, if this policy is implemented, where they could set up shop without forming a joint venture, that would be significant to them, because they wouldn't have to worry about you know, intellectual property concerns. They would be able to wholly own the operations there, whereas you have GM, Ford, you know, BMW, Volkswagen. They have to you know, share in the spoils of their operations in China with you know, 50-50 joint ventures.
We close tonight with something showing up in cities across the country. It is a $5,500 bike-car hybrid called the Elf. Vicente Arenas took a test drive.
They run on sunshine and sweat, and they're hard to miss in Durham, North Carolina. Commuter Lori Bush loves turning heads.
Oh, I got a lot of funny looks. Sometimes I'll see people with the kids in the back and they're waving.
This egg-shaped machine is called an ELF, short for electric, light, and fun.
It's a great mix of a car and a bike.
It's actually a backwards tricycle fueled by bike pedals and a tiny solar-powered motor that can carry passengers and cargo up to 550 pounds.
This is a huge game changer.
It's the brainchild of inventor and former race car technician Rob Cotter, CEO of Organic Transit.
What we're looking to do is take the bicycle experience and integrate it with car-like functions.
Pure pedal power right now? Yeah. The ELF requires no insurance or gasoline and is pollution-free. It does 20 miles per hour with straight pedal power. Add the motor and the ELF can do 35.
To stop pedaling, and this is all power.
And it goes on its own. It's estimated that the average ELF driver could eliminate 3 tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere every year.
This is a 100-watt flexible solar panel.
In 18 months, Cotter has built and sold 450 ELFs and plans to triple that this year.
Most of the planet, they don't have automobiles. They don't have cars. Some of them hardly have roads.
He's poised to scale up to mass production with sales at resorts, at senior centers, and in developing countries.
I don't even own a Duke parking pass anymore. I just have a Duke bike permit.
Charlotte Clark is a staffer at Duke University, where up to a dozen ELFs park each day.
I have only put about 5,000 miles on my car since I've had the ELF. Way less than half of what I used to.
It may not be ready for the interstate, but the ELF is making inroads in local neighborhoods where people like Charlotte Clark hit the road every day.
Researchers at Cairo's Helwan University wanted to create a vehicle to help disabled students move around campus.
So we started to look at what's available on the market and what the country is doing for them, and we found that there are electric wheelchairs or manual wheelchairs. But these chairs don't allow people to go long distances. You cannot use them to go from Mazar al-Gadida to Nasr City or from Nasr City to Mahdi. They cannot cross long distances.
This remote-controlled, solar-powered car solves that problem.
So we decided to make them a 3-wheeled car. They can go long distances with it. They would not need anybody to help them drive it or to stop it. And if they need to stop it, there is an emergency system that they can work manually. Its speed reaches 55 kilometers per hour. This is a very good speed in Egypt especially.
The Egyptian team is now raising funds to start mass producing their people mover. Meanwhile, get ready for the Arcimoto, coming from the U.S. state of Oregon. It's a 3-wheeled electric vehicle designed to be a commuter car.
I thought, you know, if we could build something that was much closer to the motorcycle in terms of efficiency and fun factor and, you know, footprint on the road, but was close to the car in terms of capabilities and enclosable and carries groceries and stable, that we'd have a real product opportunity.
It's called the SRK, and it'll be available in the next few months. But it's taken 10 years and a few prototypes to get it right.
By switching to handlebar steering, we were able to move the passengers into a more upright seating position like you would have on a city scooter. And that let us shorten the vehicle by almost 2 feet and drop hundreds of pounds, almost 600 pounds of weight between Generation 7 and Generation 8.
Losing all that weight kept the price down to a relatively inexpensive $12,000. It also gives the SRK a top speed of 136 kilometers per hour, and its range of 112 kilometers is more than enough to get most people to work or the store.
Toyota shifts its fuel-saving technology into the next gear, adding solar panels to the Prius's newest model. Launched in Japan in June, the Prius PHV pairs plug-in electric car technology with solar panel roofing. The Prius PHV works like an electric car, driving off the battery until the levels gets too low. After that, it switches to the gas function. While the estimated range of the electric function is 22 miles, the solar panels could help push that range on sunny days. According to the company, the new model will go as far as 120 miles per gallon, including miles traveled as an electric car. For comparison, older models of the Prius get about 50 miles per gallon. However, strict safety rules prevent Toyota from selling the solar panel model in the U.S. Instead, a so-called Prius Prime will only feature the plug-in hybrid engine technology.
China aiming to become a more eco-friendly country, China's Ministry of Industry and Information Technology has announced a deadline for automakers to meet its new sales targets for green cars.
China announced that it will soon set deadlines to stop selling vehicles that run solely on fossil fuels.
Let's talk about China now, because an energy conglomerate there is actually seeking opportunities in electric vehicles 8 months after announcing plans to make batteries for zero-emission cars.
Currently, China is the world leader in producing electric vehicles. Private Chinese car makers and their foreign partners are already showcasing the next generation of green cars.
China aiming to become a more eco-friendly country, China's Ministry of Industry and Information Technology has announced a deadline for automakers to meet its new sales targets for green cars. By the year goals equivalent to 10% of annual sales. That level will then rise to 12% for 2020. The targets remove an 8% quota for 2018, giving car makers a one-year grace period. Firms with annual sales volumes above 30,000 units will be required to comply with these targets. China, the world's largest auto market, has been working to develop its own NEV market of plug-in hybrids and fully electric cars. In the long term, it's aiming to ban the production and sales of cars that use traditional fuels.
China announced that it will soon set deadlines to stop selling vehicles that run solely on fossil fuels. In making this commitment, China joins Britain, France, and other signatories to the Paris Climate Agreement who have made similar pledges. Currently, China is the world leader in producing electric vehicles. Private Chinese car makers and their foreign partners are already showcasing the next generation of green cars. Still, by some estimates, China will also autonomy as it became the factory floor for the world. With its dramatic economic growth over the past 20 years, also came overwhelming pollution around urban and industrial centers. In 2005, China surpassed the U.S. as the world's leading emitter of greenhouse gases. In recent years, China has made it a national priority to develop a greener economy that reduces pollution and carbon emissions. With its growing fleet of electric vehicles and advances in solar technology, China is showing its determination to grow that green economy.
Let's talk about China now, because an energy conglomerate there is actually seeking opportunities in electric vehicles 8 months after announcing plans to make batteries for zero-emission cars. In our exclusive interview with Bloomberg here, Golden Concord Group's President Ko Bing-gun says that the company plans to team up with a car maker in China to join the already heated EV market.
We believe that the new energy vehicle is definitely an important direction for our company's development in the future. We are now discussing the details with Jianling Motors Group to cooperate on EV projects. We will each bring our own advantages together to further push on the front of technology innovation. The competition in this area has already been very fierce in China. We need to employ strategies that are different from our solar manufacturing when entering the EV market.
Are you aiming to be the Tesla of China, or is it a very different vision?
GCL is not hugely ambitious in the EV sector. At this stage, we simply want to take part in the fast development of the industry. Tesla has great practice in EV manufacturing, as most players are learning from it. We choose to proceed based on our own situation instead of copying the Tesla model.
Generally, how do you see things developing in the solar sector broadly? How do you see things playing out, given all those different factors?
Solar energy is definitely becoming one of the basic units of global energy in the future. Therefore, we all believe it has a very bright business prospect. It's common to see market fluctuations and face tough global competition, but we have remained extremely competitive as we always seek to optimize our business structure to reduce possible risks.
Solar cell prices have been pressured over quite a long period of time, but they've started to inch up now marginally. Do you think that price increase that we're seeing is going to be sustained for solar cells?
Looking at the long run, the prices of solar products will continue to move downward as a result of technology improvement. Development of capacity and growth of scale are still dominating the industry despite the slowdown we're seeing at the moment.
So there's a bit of pressure now building in the US to look at putting tariffs on solar cell imports. How concerned would you be about that? What kind of impact could that have on your business? And are you taking any steps to mitigate any potential US tariffs?
Measures of trade protection have already exerted certain impacts on relevant industries and business. We hope governments and international agencies can soon take effective actions under the WTO framework to end the practices of anti-dumping and anti-subsidy worldwide.
This is Tong Zhebiao's brand new car. It's an electric E5 made in China by local automaker BYD.
第一台是大众的，现在购买的是那个纯电动的汽车。
You might be more familiar with electric vehicles made by Tesla, Chevrolet and Nissan, but Chinese car makers build half the world's EVs. Tong, an engineer, is one of the 700,000 electric vehicle owners who are making China the world's largest EV market. China's green vehicle boom isn't driven primarily by concern for the environment. It's the government's industrial policy that's making it happen. EVs are cheap because of subsidies, and they're easy to buy because of a set of rules that are unique to China. Tong bought this BYD vehicle because he wasn't able to drive his gas-powered Volkswagen around the city of Shenzhen with his out-of-town license plate.
汽油车的话，我买的是外地牌，不是本深圳牌，所以的话，在深圳的话是有限行。
Getting a license plate for gasoline cars has become hard in Shenzhen. As in several of China's most congested cities, gasoline car license plates are severely restricted and can only be obtained through lotteries or expensive auctions. In Beijing, for example, 11.3 million people entered the license plate lottery in April. Fewer than 14,000 got one.
等于说，很多人是摇了1年，或者甚至2年，还有甚至将近3年的都摇不到。
But EVs are exempt from those restrictions. Tong was able to get a license plate for his electric car immediately and for free. The government has also been heavily subsidizing automakers and customers since 2009.
So if you have a $35,000 US vehicle, you could have, for example, $10,000 in national and city level credits that get that vehicle down to $25,000. This gets expensive for the government to continue.
Today, China accounts for almost half of the world's plug-in car sales. Beijing's goal? to be selling 15 million EVs a year by 2030, and to see 2 Chinese brands emerge as global industry leaders by 2025. Brands like BYD, which sold more EVs than any other automaker globally last year, are planning to expand overseas, including to the US.
And if we work together to build
They're even hiring American movie stars to make glitzy commercials.
You can make history tomorrow.
But analysts say they'll need to shake off China's reputation as a maker of second-rate cars in order to succeed. And that's not the only challenge for China's would-be EV champions. Foreign automakers like Tesla are gearing up to start making their own plug-in cars here to capitalize on China's fast-growing EV market. The government has also said it will end subsidies by around 2020.
There's a calculated bet that's being made by the Chinese government. In a few years, the cost of electric vehicles will come down enough that they'll be attractive to consumers.
Outside of a handful of cities, however, the availability of charging stations is limited, at least for now. Tong will drive his BYD around Shenzhen, but he is not yet ready to get rid of his old car.
因为是很多城市还没有普及那个充电桩、充电设备，我现在还能保留着那个第一台汽油车，是这样子的。因为像我是可能需要几个城市跑，可能的话我会使用汽油车。现在目前的情况下。
New era means Chinese economy is different from 70 years ago, or even 30 years ago. Now, China is #1 manufacturer in the world. Probably #1 trader in the world and one of the biggest manufacturer, and very soon a very important financier. So the weight and scale of the Chinese economy is so huge that nobody can live without. But the problem is all these fast development came with a heavy price. That is the toll on environment and energy consumption. And Chinese economy might want to make it over. But how? I think by making it smarter and lighter. Smarter means that China will use all the latest development of human ingenuity and technologies like big data, artificial intelligence, robotics, to max up the productivity as best as it can. But making it lighter, I think it means to reduce the Chinese footprint on Mother Nature. That's why China stick to the Paris Climate Agreement, although the U.S. Decides to pull out of it. And that's why China wants to get more fossil fuel automobiles off the cars and develop more electric vehicles. Green energy is not a maybe here in China. It's a must.
Battery-powered electric vehicles are literally shocking the world, appealing to a fast-growing group of price and environmentally conscious consumers.
It wouldn't be a modern consumer electronics show without a flurry of new electric vehicles. And while some of the flashy prototypes might never make it to market, the technology under their hoods could improve electric cars everywhere.
Sales of electric vehicles are way up in Colorado. In fact, they've doubled over the same period last year.
Tesla briefly flashed a sketch of its upcoming pickup truck. Singapore is bringing new meaning to going green by rolling out these so-called blue cars.
Kia Motors will launch the all-electric Genesis luxury sedan in 2021.
China is the world's largest auto market, and electric vehicles are clearly the car of the future. Beginning in 2019, 1 in 10 cars sold in China will be electric.
It wouldn't be a modern consumer electronics show without a flurry of new electric vehicles. And while some of the flashy prototypes might never make it to market, the technology under their hoods could improve electric cars everywhere. Batteries in modern EVs won't always take you as far as gasoline, and filling a tank takes way less time than charging, even with special hardware to speed up the process. But Fisker says its newest car will include flexible solid-state batteries that could deliver more power and range than lithium-ion cells, while taking up the same amount of space and taking less time to charge. This would also be useful for just about anything that uses rechargeable batteries, not just vehicles. For today's lithium-ion cars, AeroVironment is showing off a new charger the company claims will top up more batteries faster. And Continental is teasing inductive charging, similar to wireless charging for cell phones, but scaled up. It could be as efficient as some of today's plug-in standards, providing almost 40 hours of range per hour of charging. Car makers are hoping advances like these make the EV market more appealing for U.S. drivers. For all the hype, electric vehicles still make up less than 1% of U.S. vehicles.
Sales of electric vehicles are way up in Colorado. In fact, they've doubled over the same period last year. Tonight, Sean Boyd shows us why so many buyers are going electric.
I certainly was an early believer.
When Evan Fryerich bought a Nissan Leaf 2 years ago, he was among a handful of people in the entire state to own an electric vehicle. Today, Colorado has the 4th fastest electric vehicle market in the country. And by 2025, it's estimated 1 million Coloradans will be driving EVs.
I love the car, and I love the statement it makes. I'm for cleaner energy.
Fryerich part of what Will Tour calls a revolution in transportation electrification. Why are electric vehicles taking off now?
And electric vehicles are just getting to be longer range and are getting to be cheaper. Put those two things together and pretty soon there's not going to be a reason to have gasoline vehicles.
It's a second industrial revolution, but for cars.
Boulder's Nigel Zeed is Nissan's #1 electric vehicle salesman in the country. He says 4 years ago, Boulder Nissan sold 80 electric vehicles a year. Today, it sells 80 a month and is sold out of the 2017 Leaf after offering a $10,000 rebate on top of a $5,000 state tax credit and $7,500 federal incentive. Fryerich bought his car for $14,000 brand new.
So that it's largely maintenance-free?
It's warranted for 100,000 miles. After that, battery replacement is $5,500. But Zeed says batteries are getting cheaper and cleaner. Right now, they're made of heavy metals like lithium.
But there's solid-state batteries are coming out now. There's zinc air batteries, carbon nanotube. There's a product called graphene.
Today's batteries are also longer lasting. Newer models can go more than 200 miles on a charge.
This is going to put about 20 to 25 miles per hour of charge back into the car. And if you want to do it in, say, half an hour from empty, you'd use something like this, a DC fast charger.
These superchargers will begin appearing on major interstates next year.
This is an emerging market, and so Colorado wants to get out in front of that.
XL planning for the increased demand, too. Current trends show most people charge at night when wind is abundant and demand low.
It's hard to anticipate really the instantaneous demand of what we'll see, but we're ready to provide it.
It's really incumbent upon us as a state to make sure that we are both supporting that transition and that we're ready for that transition.
Sean Boyd covering Colorado First.
The big car companies are really investing in electric vehicles. Volvo announced it will produce only electric vehicles in the next 2 years. GM will roll out 20 new electric models in the next 5 years. Even Shell Oil is now investing in charging stations.
The next generation Tesla Roadster stole the show on November 16th, even as the company introduced its first ever semi. Both vehicles are impressive, but the new product announcement didn't stop there. Tesla briefly flashed a sketch of its upcoming pickup truck. It's a mammoth of an EV, but stands very little chance of ever becoming a mainstream vehicle. Recent comments suggest 2 upcoming pickups from the company, including a model that could be much bigger than a Ford F-150.
A little shocker this week for drivers in Vaughan. Drivers of gas-powered cars suddenly found themselves getting ticketed for parking in the electric vehicle parking spots at Vaughan Mills. The GM tells us the spots recently became active in the last 2 or 3 days. Well, that is not the only shock that drivers are feeling this week. How about that cold? It's hard enough on humans, but what about its effect on the electric car? Well, joining me now to talk about it is CEO of Plug and Drive, Kara Clairman. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
So as any cell phone user will tell you, they know what the cold does to the battery. It dies really quickly. What about the electric car?
So what you'll find is you will have a reduced range compared to a regular, what we call a perfect EV day, like no heat, no air. That's the ideal day. So what you're going to see is if it's 0, -5, you're not going to see a significant impact. Where you see the really significant impact is what we've got today, like -20. Then you will see a drop in your battery range as much as 30–40%.
That sounds quite significant. In terms of distances, what does that mean?
So, for example, I drive a Chevy Bolt, and that has 400 kilometers of range on a perfect day. In a day like today, I'm going to get something like 230 kilometers.
So you drive an electric vehicle. How do you find the battery life is when it's this cold?
Well, you know what? There is a significant hit to the battery life. However, it's not as crazy as one might think. I think if you were to preheat your engine a bit, that keeps it going for a while.
If you're a person who's taking a long road trip on a -20 day, then, of course, then you do have something to think about.
Say if you're visiting family over the holidays.
Right.
What about speeds? Does that mean you can top out less when it's colder than when it's a normal EV day?
Well, that's true. Driving at any time. So if you drive faster, of course you burn through your fuel more quickly. True for gas cars, and it's true for EVs as well. So when it's this cold, to manage your range, you might drive, a little closer to the speed limit.
Just the fact that you see something like a 40% drop in weather like today, would you say that electric cars simply aren't Canadian climate friendly?
I wouldn't say that at all. Again, you have to remember that most of us only drive 30 or so kilometers a day. So for most of us, the range is going to be plenty. By no means are these cars not suitable for winter. I have to say, actually, their traction in winter is amazing because they have that really heavy battery underneath, and that gives you great stability in the snow. So there's lots of benefits as well.
And they're certainly becoming more popular. In fact, the ministry tells it there's currently 16,000 electric vehicles currently on the road here in Ontario. So there you have it. It's not just humans being affected on a really bitter cold day like today.
Battery-powered electric vehicles are literally shocking the world, appealing to a fast-growing group of price and environmentally conscious consumers. The question now is precisely when will electric cars leave their current luxury or green tech niches and enter the mainstream? WSJ Heard on the Street Steve Wilmot says that depends above all on relative cost. And on that front, electric vehicles have momentum. But since gasoline-powered vehicles may remain supreme for at least another decade, he says, investors still need to watch to ensure they don't get caught on the wrong side of history. The plummeting cost of batteries is key. The growth of mobile computing has driven massive investment in the area, improving the range of electric cars while reducing their production costs. And the industry already has a model to follow. Tesla is showing that there's consumer demand for well-designed electric cars, spurring nearly all the industry's incumbents from Detroit to Germany to Japan to invest heavily. General Motors is due to release its all-electric Chevrolet Bolt in the coming weeks at a post-tax price of $30,000, less than the average car sale price in America, though high for a compact. Tesla's much-hyped Model 3 is expected late next year at a slightly lower price, but retaining relevance and profits in the electric era will be a challenge for traditional car makers. However, that won't stop them from trying. Germany's big three, VW, Daimler, and BMW, have all unveiled new electric vehicle strategies this year. As a result, the next few years will bring about a flurry of launches to rival the Bolt and the Model 3. So how should investors tackle the biggest disruption the auto industry has encountered in decades? Shares in nearly all car makers, bar Tesla, are currently very cheap, both relative to their trading history and the wider market. And WSJ's Wilmot predicts that in time, the companies that survive the rapids of industrial change could be seen and valued more like tech companies.
Korea's top automaker Hyundai Motor Group has unveiled plans to increase its electric car lineup, aiming to be one of the world's top 3 electric car makers within the next 8 years. A senior Hyundai executive announced on Wednesday that Hyundai Motor and its affiliate Kia Motors are planning to increase their number of all-electric models from 2 to 14 by 2025. Hyundai Motor will launch an electric version of the Kona subcompact sport utility vehicle next year, while Kia Motors will launch the all-electric Genesis luxury sedan in 2021. The move comes as global rivals also gear up for large-scale production of electric cars.
This is one of the newest factories for Shenzhen-based BYD. It's a leader in the development of China's electric vehicles. In this factory, it is developing state-of-the-art electric buses. But the factory isn't in China. It's actually in Hungary.
Hungary has a very good investment environment. The government welcomes the new technology, especially the electric bus technology, to come here to renovate the bus industry. And also locally we have a very good trained, skilled workers.
The BYD factory in Hungary opened earlier this year. The buses meet strict regulations set by the European Union. On a 5-hour charge, the buses can drive for about 300 kilometers. Another BYD factory is set to open in France.
Iron phosphate batteries made in China at the BYD center. And this has, I can say that we have the complete supply chain in-house at BYD, from the batteries to the complete vehicle. And these, I can say, are middleweight or lightweight batteries, and can bear the mass so far away.
China is the world's largest auto market, and electric vehicles are clearly the car of the future. Beginning in 2019, 1 in 10 cars sold in China will be electric. That's a requirement for large automakers recently set by the Chinese government. As it stands now, Chinese companies dominate the country's electric vehicle market. All of the top 5 electric car sellers in China are Chinese. Foreign automakers like Volkswagen and Nissan are racing to join in.
We will invest together with our 2 joint ventures about 10 billion euros in that period to develop these new energy vehicles, to industrialize that in our plants, develop the people and so on.
What we want is bring all our knowledge to the Chinese market, working with Chinese engineers, working with Chinese suppliers in order to bring a very affordable electric cars that should come to the market in 2019.
One of the barriers to increasing electric vehicle sales is cost. They're simply more expensive. Others are concerned about the materials used to build the cars themselves.
Automakers, on the other hand, has the responsibility to make sure that not only the fuel of the car, but also the material that are used to assemble the car is taken care of their environmental impact as well.
This is how China sees its near future. Blue skies and the soothing sound of electric vehicles roaming the city streets. Present day more often looks like this. Research shows that 1/3 of air pollution in China comes from petrol and diesel cars. That's why the government recently decided that traditionally fueled cars are a thing of the past. And like France and Britain, it wants to ban them in the next few decades. When Chen Dong bought his electric car 2 years ago, he didn't have to go through the license plate lottery, a government measure to limit traffic. He also got his car much cheaper because of a government subsidy of up to $15,000. And unlike petrol and diesel-fueled cars, he can drive in any part of the city, anytime he wants, as long his car has enough power.
Once I was about to go to a charging station, but my navigation led me to the wrong place. There was no charging station and not a single person around. I was forced to call a rescue team.
In China, more than 500,000 people bought an electric car last year. That's half of all electric cars sold worldwide, forcing the government to quickly build more charging stations. It's been hard to keep up with the demand, and car batteries often don't last much more than 200 kilometers.
Despite government incentives, electric cars are still not that popular here in China. Many consider them impractical and ugly, but producers are trying very hard to make electric cars more fashionable.
Car makers are increasingly pressured to produce electric cars. A recently announced attractive credit system allows companies to make money selling carbon credit quota to traditional car makers. But some experts believe the government's plan is unrealistic and they question the benefits of electric cars.
If we want to replace all the traditional cars in the next 3 decades, this is a lie. This is a fundamentally, scientifically lie to the world.
Greenpeace sees China's rapid switch to electric cars as a positive step to combat climate change. But the environmental group says it's by far not enough, because 70% of the country's power plants are using coal, a major emitter of greenhouse gas.
If we really want a clean future, and we really want to combat climate change, only pushing for electric vehicle is not enough. We need to at the same time